The champagne tray trembled in her hands as the little boy tore through Seoul's elite, his desperate cry shattering the ballroom's polished silence. "Iyama, Mama." Every head turned. The child hadn't uttered a single word since his mother's death, yet here he was, sobbing into a stranger's uniform, clutching her like she was his only salvation. And when the Mafia Don hosting this charity gala locked eyes with her across the frozen crowd, she saw something that terrified her more than his reputation ever could: recognition. Welcome to Sami's library of Afro-Korean stories. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more of this. The rain hammered against the windows of the Grand Joseon Hotel in Gangnam, Seoul's most exclusive district. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast golden light across a ballroom filled with South Korea's elite, politicians, business moguls, and underneath it all, the hidden power players who truly controlled the city. Amara Okonkwo moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, her borrowed server's uniform crisp and black, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. At 28, she'd learned how to make herself small, unremarkable. It was a survival skill she'd perfected over 3 years in Seoul. Her hands trembled slightly as she balanced the champagne tray. Not from nerves, though God knew she had reason to be nervous, but from exhaustion. She'd worked a double shift at the Hope Foundation's offices that morning, processing grant applications until her eyes blurred, then rushed to this gala when a catering company called desperate for last-minute staff. She needed the money. Desperately. Her visa renewal application sat on her tiny apartment's kitchen table, stamped with a fee of 850,000 Korean wons. Money she didn't have. Her 7-year-old ward, Chisholm, needed new school shoes, winter clothes, and the permission slip for the class trip that Amara couldn't afford to sign sat like an accusation in her purse. The irony wasn't lost on her. By day, she worked for a foundation dedicated to helping struggling families. By night, she was one of them. "Excuse me, miss." An older woman in diamonds waved imperiously. More champagne. Amara moved to refill her glass, keeping her expression neutral. The woman didn't even look at her. To people like this, servers were furniture, useful but essentially invisible. The stage at the far end of the ballroom commanded attention. A banner stretched across the back wall, the Hope Foundation, building tomorrow's future. The foundation's director was supposed to give a speech tonight, something about children's education and healthcare initiatives. Noble causes funded by questionable money, Amara had learned. Seoul's underworld had its fingers in everything, even charity. She was refilling glasses at table 12 when she felt it, a shift in the room's energy. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. A ripple of recognition moved through the crowd like wind across water. Kang Dae-hyun had entered the ballroom. Amara had never seen him in person before, only in photographs on the foundation's website and occasional news articles. The pictures didn't do him justice. He was tall, over 6 feet, with the kind of presence that made a room feel smaller just by entering it. His tailored black suit probably cost more than Amara made in 6 months. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and eyes that were almost black in the chandelier light. But it was more than his appearance. There was something in the way he moved, the way people unconsciously stepped aside to let him pass. This was a man accustomed to power, to obedience. This was a man who was dangerous. Amara knew the rumors. Everyone in Seoul's Korean-Nigerian community whispered about the Kang family. On the surface, they were legitimate businessmen shipping real estate, technology investments. The Hope Foundation was their crown jewel, a monument to civic responsibility. Underneath, they controlled most of the illegal shipping operations through Busan and Incheon. Contraband, weapons, occasionally people. The Kang family's reach extended from the ports to the city's most exclusive clubs, from politicians' offices to police precincts. Dae-hyun's late wife, Park Soo-jin, had started the Hope Foundation 5 years ago. She genuinely believed in the work, people said. Believed that even a family built on blood money could do some good in the world. She died 14 months ago. Car accident on a mountain road. Brakes failed. The investigation had been swift, conclusive, and almost certainly bought. Now Dae-hyun ran the foundation alone, a widower playing at philanthropy, while his empire expanded in the shadows. He walked toward the stage, and Amara found herself watching despite her better judgment. There was something in his expression, a carefully controlled blankness that looked like it cost him to maintain. Grief, maybe, or guilt. She was so focused on him that she almost didn't notice the little boy. Min-jae appeared from somewhere in the crowd, a tiny figure in a miniature tuxedo that matched his father's. 5 years old, according to the Foundation's literature. The heir to the Kong Empire, though he probably didn't know it yet. He stood at the edge of the crowd, his small face pale and drawn. His dark eyes, so like his father's, scanned the room with an intensity that seemed wrong for a child. Amara's heart clenched. She recognized that look. She'd seen it in Chisholm's eyes when Amara first became her guardian, after Chisholm's parents died in a car crash in Lagos. It was the look of a child who'd lost something fundamental, something that made the world make sense. Min-jae's gaze moved across the ballroom, searching for what Amara couldn't imagine. Then his eyes found hers. The world seemed to stop. Amara watched, frozen, as recognition flashed across the boy's face. Not confusion, not curiosity, recognition. As if he'd been looking for her specifically, as if he'd found something he desperately needed. He started walking toward her, then running. Min-jae, a woman's voice, probably his nanny, called out in alarm. But the boy didn't stop. He wove between guests, his small form nearly knocked over by a woman's voluminous hanbok. Someone tried to grab his arm, but he jerked away. He was crying, Amara realized. Tears streaming down his cheeks, small face crumpling with an emotion too big for his small body to contain. And he was running straight toward her. Amara barely had time to set down her champagne tray before he crashed into her legs. Small arms wrapped around her waist with desperate strength, his face buried in the borrowed fabric of her server's vest. The entire ballroom fell silent. Yama, the boy sobbed into her stomach. Yama, you came back.
Mom.
He was calling her mom. Amara's hands hovered uselessly above his shaking shoulders. She looked up, searching for someone to explain, someone to help. Instead, she met Kang Dae-hyun's eyes across the ballroom. He stood frozen on the stage steps, his carefully controlled expression shattered. For one unguarded moment, Amara saw everything underneath: shock, hope, and something that looked dangerously close to anguish. Then his face closed down, the mask slamming back into place. He moved toward them with swift, purposeful strides. The crowd parted instantly, people stepping back as if from a predator. Up close, he was even more imposing, tall enough that Amara had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, broad-shouldered, radiating a controlled intensity that made her pulse quicken. I apologize, he said, his voice low and carefully modulated. Korean first, then switching to English with barely an accent. My son hasn't. He stopped, his gaze dropping to Min-jae, then back to Amara's face. His expression did something complicated. Something that looked almost like pain. He hasn't spoken in a year, Dae-hyun said quietly. Not since the funeral. The doctors call it selective mutism brought on by trauma. Amara's breath caught. I'm so sorry, but I don't. Yama, Min-jae said again, his small voice muffled but clear. His grip on Amara tightened. Don't leave me again. Please don't leave. The ballroom remained silent. 500 of Seoul's most powerful people watched as a 5-year-old clung to a Nigerian server in a borrowed uniform, calling her mother. Amara felt the weight of their stares, calculation, curiosity, and in some faces, barely concealed disgust. She'd experienced racism in Seoul before, the sideways glances and muttered comments. But never like this, never so publicly, never with so much at stake. Min-jae. Dae-hyun knelt beside his son, his voice gentle in a way that seemed at odds with his intimidating presence. This isn't your mother. I know she looks. She came back, Min-jae interrupted, his voice rising with desperate certainty. She said she would come back, and she did. You promised, Iyama. You promised. Dae-hyun's jaw clenched. He looked at Amara, really looked at her for the first time. His gaze traveled over her face, her dark skin, her cheekbones, the shape of her eyes. Looking for something. You don't look like her, he said, more to himself than to Amara. Not really. The height is similar and the build, but... A man in a dark suit appeared at Dae-hyun's shoulder, leaning in to whisper urgently in Korean. Dae-hyun's expression hardened. Sir, the man said, switching to English with a pointed glance at Amara. We have a situation. Mr. Choi is requesting an immediate audience. Tell him I'm occupied. He was insistent. He says if you don't meet with him tonight, he'll take the matter into his own hands. Something cold flickered in Dae-hyun's eyes. I see. He looked back at Amara and Min-jae. The boy still clung to her, his small body shaking with silent sobs. Every time Amara tried to gently disengage his grip, he held on tighter. I need to speak with you, Dae-hyun said to Amara. Privately. Please. It wasn't really a request. Men like Kang Dae-hyun didn't make requests. They gave polite commands and expected obedience. But there was something in his voice, underneath the authority. Something that sounded like desperation. Amara looked down at Min-jae, at his small face pressed against her stomach, at his tiny hands fisted in her vest. She thought of Chisholm at home with Mrs. Park from downstairs, probably already asleep, hopefully not worrying about why Amara was late. She thought of her visa application and the money she desperately needed. She thought of the way this little boy had looked at her, like she was hope itself, like she was the answer to a prayer. Okay, she heard herself say. We can talk. The private room behind the stage was nothing like the opulent ballroom. Simple furniture, muted colors, a space designed for function rather than impression. 2 security guards stood outside the door, which they closed behind Dae-hyun, Amara, and Min-jae, with a soft click that sounded too final. Min-jae hadn't let go of Amara's hand. He sat pressed against her side on the leather couch, his small body rigid with tension. Every few seconds, he glanced up at her face, as if making sure she was still real, still there. Dae-hyun paced in front of the desk, his controlled movements reminding Amara of a caged animal. He'd taken off his suit jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves. She could see tattoos on his forearms, traditional Korean designs that probably meant something significant in his world. My name is Kang Dae-hyun, he said finally, stopping to face her. Though I assume you already know that. I work for the Hope Foundation, Amara replied carefully. In the grant processing department. I've seen your picture. Your name? Amara Okonkwo. His eyebrows rose slightly. Nigerian? Yes. And you live in Seoul? For 3 years now. I have a work visa. At least for another 2 weeks, assuming she could pay the renewal fee. Dae-hyun nodded slowly. His gaze dropped to Min-jae, and his expression softened almost imperceptibly. My son hasn't spoken since his mother's funeral. 14 months of silence. The doctors say it's trauma. He was with her when she died. The car went off the road on a mountain pass. They found him trapped in the back seat, covered in her blood, unable to move for 3 hours before rescue arrived. Amara's heart clenched. She couldn't help it. She squeezed Min-jae's hand gently. The boy looked up at her with those dark, solemn eyes. I've tried everything, Dae-hyun continued. Therapists, specialists, medications. Nothing worked. He just stopped. Stopped talking, stopped smiling, stopped eating anything but what Mrs. Cho, his nanny, could force down him. He wakes up screaming every night. He won't let me touch him. His voice cracked just slightly on that last sentence. He turned away, his shoulders tense. The doctors say he needs time, that grief doesn't follow a schedule. But I've been watching him disappear for over a year, and I don't. He stopped, his hands clenching into fists. I don't know how to save him. Amara didn't know what to say. This was so far beyond her experience, beyond anything she was qualified to handle. She was a grant processor who could barely afford her own rent, not a therapist or a miracle worker. Why does he think I'm his mother? She asked quietly. Dae-hyun turned back to face her. I don't know. You don't look like Soo-jin. She was Korean, lighter skin, different features. But something about you. He trailed off, studying her face again. The height is similar. You're both tall for women. And the way you stand, maybe. The way you hold yourself. Sujin worked for an NGO before we married, before the foundation. She had this way of moving through the world like she belonged everywhere, like she wasn't afraid. He said it like an observation, not a compliment. But Amara felt heat rise to her cheeks anyway. I can't help you, she said. I don't know anything about trauma or grief therapy.
I'm nobody.
You're the first person he's spoken to in 14 months, Dae-hyun countered. That makes you somebody. A knock at the door interrupted them. The man in the dark suit from before, Dae-hyun's assistant or bodyguard or whatever he was, stuck his head in. Sir, Mr. Choi is becoming impatient. He's threatening to leave. Let him leave. He says if you don't meet with him now, he'll assume you're refusing his terms. He'll consider it a declaration. Dae-hyun's jaw clenched.
Fine.
Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes. The door closed again. Dae-hyun pulled out his phone, typing something quickly, then looked at Amara. I need to handle something, he said. Business that can't wait. But I'd like to speak with you more about Min-jae. Would you be willing to stay for a bit longer? There's a car that can take you home afterward. You'll be compensated for your time. Amara hesitated. Everything about this situation screamed danger. Getting involved with someone like Kang Dae-hyun, with his world of violence and blood money, was a terrible idea. But Min-jae's small hand squeezed hers, and she looked down to find him staring up at her with desperate hope. Please, the boy whispered. Please don't go. Amara's resistance crumbled. Okay, she said. I'll stay for a bit. Relief flashed across Dae-hyun's face. Thank you. Mrs. Cho will bring some food. Make yourself comfortable. He started toward the door, then paused. And Amara? Don't leave this room. For your safety. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with that same sense of finality. Amara sat in the sudden silence, acutely aware of Min-jae's small form pressed against her side, of the security guards outside the door, of the fact that she was trapped in a private room in a hotel ballroom surrounded by some of Seoul's most dangerous people. What the hell had she just agreed to? Part 2. The Threat. Choi Jin-woo sat in the hotel's private lounge like a king holding court, though his kingdom was built on blood and intimidation. At 53, he was silver-haired and sharp-featured, dressed in an expensive suit that couldn't quite disguise the calculated cruelty in his eyes. 2 of his men flanked him, muscle in dark suits, their jackets cut to conceal weapons. Around the lounge, Choi's people had positioned themselves at strategic points. A show of force, a reminder that Choi didn't travel alone, didn't take chances. Dae-hyun entered with his own security detail, Yoon Sang-min, his second-in-command, and 4 others who spread out to mirror Choi's positioning. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. You kept me waiting, Choi said mildly. I don't appreciate waiting, Dae-hyun. You demanded an immediate meeting during my foundation's gala, Dae-hyun replied, his tone flat. I had obligations to attend to first. Ah yes, the Hope Foundation. Choi's smile didn't reach his eyes. Such a noble endeavor. I'm sure Sujin would be proud of how you've continued her legacy. The mention of his dead wife was deliberate, a calculated provocation. Dae-hyun's expression didn't change, but his hands clenched at his sides. What do you want, Choi? Straight to business. I always appreciated that about you. Choi gestured to the chair across from him.
Seat.
We have much to discuss. Dae-hyun remained standing. Say what you came to say. Choi's smile faded. Very well. The Incheon docks. I want controlling interest by the end of the month. The Incheon shipping docks were the crown jewel of the Kang family's operation. Billions of won in legitimate and illegitimate cargo moved through those facilities every year. They were the backbone of Dae-hyun's empire, the foundation of his power. No, Dae-hyun said simply. I wasn't asking. Choi leaned forward. I've been patient, Dae-hyun. Very patient. When Sujin died, and you fell apart, when you neglected your business to play grieving husband, I could have moved then. I could have taken everything while you were weak. You want gratitude for basic decency? I want acknowledgement that the landscape has changed. Choi's voice hardened. Your operation has been bleeding money for 3 years. Did you think I didn't notice? Someone's been skimming from your shipping accounts, diverting profits, sabotaging deals. You've been so distracted with your dead wife's charity project that you haven't even noticed your empire crumbling. Dae-hyun's eyes narrowed. If you're trying to convince me to hand over my docs by admitting you've been sabotaging my business, you're doing a poor job. I'm not admitting anything. Choi smiled. I'm simply observing that you're in a weakened position, and that I'm in a position to either help you recover or finish what's been started. Get to the point. The docs, Dae-hyun. Sign them over to me, and I'll ensure your remaining operations continue uninterrupted. Refuse, and I'll take them anyway, along with everything else. The threat hung in the air. Around the room, hands moved subtly toward concealed weapons. The tension ratcheted up another notch. You're threatening war, Dae-hyun said quietly. I'm offering you a way to avoid it. You're not strong enough to fight me anymore, Dae-hyun. You haven't been since Soo-jin died. Face reality. Your time at the top is over. Dae-hyun was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost conversational. Is that what you told Soo-jin? Before you killed her? Choi's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Careful, Dae-hyun. Accusations without proof are dangerous. Her brakes failed on a road she drove every week. The investigators found evidence of tampering, then suddenly their report changed. Mechanical failure, they said. Just bad luck. Accidents happen. Not to Soo-jin. She was careful, methodical. She had the car serviced religiously. Dae-hyun took a step closer. You killed her because she was getting too close. She was reviewing the foundation's finances, noticed the discrepancies. She was going to trace the embezzlement back to you. That's a fascinating theory, Choi said. Completely unfounded, of course. Soo-jin died in an unfortunate accident. If you're looking for someone to blame, perhaps look at yourself. After all, you're the one who insisted she drive that old Mercedes instead of getting her something safer. The implication was clear. If anyone was responsible for Soo-jin's death, it was Dae-hyun himself. Dae-hyun's control finally cracked. He lunged forward, and only Sang-min's quick intervention stopped him from reaching Choi. Around the room, guns appeared, 24 weapons aimed at various targets. Easy, Sang-min murmured urgently in Dae-hyun's ear. Not here. Not now. Dae-hyun forced himself still, breathing hard. Choi hadn't even flinched, his expression one of mild amusement. There's the Dae-hyun I remember, Choi said. All that rage barely contained. But rage without power is just noise. He stood, straightening his suit. You have 3 days to decide about the docs. 3 days to accept reality. And if I refuse? Choi's smile turned cold. Then I'll take everything. Your docs, your operations, your money. Your son. The room went deadly silent. What did you say? Dae-hyun's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried clearly. Min-jae, isn't it? 5 years old. Adorable boy. I saw him earlier tonight, running through the ballroom. Choi tilted his head. Strange, wasn't it? The way he ran to that African woman. Called her mother, I heard. People are already talking about it. The great Kong Dae-hyun's son, confused and broken, clinging to a stranger. If you touch my son, I won't have to touch him, Choi interrupted. 3 days, Dae-hyun. Sign over the docs, or I'll make sure that boy joins his mother. And this time, there won't be anyone left to mourn him. He walked toward the door, his men falling into formation around him. At the threshold, he paused. Oh, and Dae-hyun? You might want to keep a closer eye on that server. It would be such a shame if something happened to her too. After all, Min-jae seems quite attached. Then he was gone, leaving Dae-hyun standing in the middle of the room, shaking with barely controlled fury. Sir, Sang-min said carefully. What do you want to do? Dae-hyun closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe, to think. Choi had just declared war, had just threatened Min-jae. The rules of engagement had changed. And somehow, impossibly, Amara Okonkwo had just become a piece on this chessboard. Increase security around Min-jae, Dae-hyun said finally.
Triple it.
And put a protection detail on the woman, Amara. 24-hour surveillance. Choi knows she's important to Min-jae now. He'll try to use her. Sir, she's just a Foundation employee. A nobody. Why would? Because my son called her mother in front of 500 witnesses, Dae-hyun interrupted. Because people are already speculating about who she is, what she means to us. Choi will see an opportunity, either to use her as leverage or to hurt Min-jae by taking her away. He turned to face Sang-min. We need to find out who's been embezzling from our operations. We need proof that Choi killed Soo-jin. And we need to do it in 3 days or we lose everything. That's impossible. Then we'll do the impossible, Dae-hyun said coldly. Because the alternative is unacceptable. He started toward the door, then stopped. And Sang-min? I want to know everything about Amara Okonkwo by morning. Everything. Part 3. The Offer. Amara was considering making a run for it when Dae-hyun returned. The past hour had been surreal. Mrs. Cho, a kind-faced woman in her 60s, had brought food, expensive dishes that Amara barely touched while Min-jae ate with surprising appetite, the first solid meal he'd had in days according to Mrs. Cho's tearful gratitude. The boy still hadn't let go of Amara's hand. He'd pressed against her side as he ate, occasionally looking up at her as if confirming she was real. He didn't speak again, but his earlier silence seemed different now, less like the heavy quiet of trauma and more like the comfortable silence of a child with someone he trusted. It terrified Amara. This little boy's desperate attachment to a stranger, the weight of his hope and need, it was too much. She didn't know how to handle this, didn't know what she was supposed to do. She thought of Chisholm at home, probably worried by now. Amara had texted Mrs. Park that she'd be late, but it was past midnight. She needed to leave. The door opened and Dae-hyun entered, looking like he'd aged a decade in the past hour. His face was drawn, his movements tired. When he saw Min-jae curled against Amara's side, something complicated crossed his expression. Mrs. Cho, please take Min-jae to the car, he said quietly. I need to speak with Miss Okonkwo privately.
No.
Min-jae's head snapped up, his hand tightening on Amara's. She'll leave. She's not leaving, Dae-hyun said, his voice gentle. I just need to talk to her. 5 minutes. Then you'll see her again. Min-jae looked at Amara, his eyes wide and desperate. Promise. Amara's throat tightened. She shouldn't promise anything. She should walk out of here and never look back, should protect herself and Chisholm from whatever dangerous situation this was becoming. But she looked at this little boy's face and found herself nodding. I promise. 5 minutes. Min-jae reluctantly released her hand and followed Mrs. Cho from the room, looking back over his shoulder every few steps until the door closed. The silence that followed felt heavy. I need to go home, Amara said. I have responsibilities. A child of my own who's waiting for me. You have a child? Dae-hyun's eyebrows rose. My ward. Her parents died 3 years ago, and I'm her legal guardian. She's 7. Something flickered in Dae-hyun's expression. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. Then you know what it's like. To be responsible for a child, to watch them suffer, and not know how to help. That's not fair. I know it's not fair, Dae-hyun interrupted. None of this is fair. Not to you, not to Min-jae, not to either of us. But fair doesn't matter anymore. He moved to the desk, pulling out a thick envelope. This is 5 million Korean wons. Approximately $4,000. Consider it compensation for your time tonight and an advance payment for what I'm about to ask. Amara stared at the envelope. 5 million won. That was more than she made in 3 months, More than enough to pay her visa renewal and Chisholm's school expenses, and their rent with plenty left over. "What are you asking?" she said warily. Dae-hyun met her eyes. "I'm asking you to stay with Min-jae. Not forever, not as a permanent arrangement. Just for a few days, maybe a week, until I can handle a situation that's developed." "What situation?" He hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell her. "There's a man, Choi Jin-woo. He's a rival in my business. He wants something I have, and he's willing to use violence to get it. Tonight, he threatened Min-jae." Amara's blood ran cold. He threatened a 5-year-old. "People in my world don't have lines they won't cross," Dae-hyun said flatly. "Children aren't exempt from the violence. If anything, they're more vulnerable, easier targets, better leverage. Then take Min-jae somewhere safe. Hire professional security." "Why would you need me?" "Because my son hasn't eaten properly in months, hasn't slept through the night in over a year, hasn't spoken a word since his mother died until tonight."
Until you.
Dae-hyun's voice roughened. "In 1 hour, you did what a dozen specialists couldn't do in 14 months. You reached him. That doesn't mean I'm qualified to protect him from a gangster. You wouldn't be protecting him. My security team will handle that. I'm asking you to be what you were tonight. Someone he trusts, someone who makes him feel safe enough to eat, to speak, to be a child again." Amara shook her head. "This is insane.
I'm nobody.
I'm a grant processor who can barely afford my own rent. I don't belong in your world." "Good," Dae-hyun said simply. "My world is violence and blood money and constant danger. The fact that you don't belong to it is exactly why Min-jae responded to you. You're safe. You're normal. You're what his mother was before she married me." He picked up the envelope, holding it out. 1 week. Stay at my residence with Min-jae. Help him feel secure during this transition period. You can bring your ward. I'll have a room prepared for her. Arrange security. You'll be compensated 1 million Korean wons per day, plus expenses. At the end of the week, if Min-jae is stable, you can walk away. No obligations, no strings. And if I refuse? Then I'll have my security team take you home safely. Thank you for your time tonight and never contact you again." His expression hardened. But Min-jae will go back to silence. He'll stop eating again, stop sleeping. He'll fade a little more each day until there's nothing left of the child he was. It was manipulation, pure and simple. Emotional blackmail wrapped in a generous financial offer. Amara knew it, and from the look in Dae-hyun's eyes, he knew she knew it. But it was also true. She'd seen the change in Min-jae tonight, the way he'd come alive in her presence. And she thought of Chisholm, of what she would have given 3 years ago for someone to help her, to give them a chance when they had nothing. 10 million Korean wons, she heard herself say. Total payment for the week, half up front. And I wanted in writing that this is temporary, that there are no additional obligations or expectations beyond being a presence for Min-jae. No personal relationship expectations, no. Agreed. Dae-hyun interrupted. He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. I'll have my lawyer draft a contract tonight. You'll have it to review in the morning. And Chisholm goes to school normally. Whatever security you arrange, it can't disrupt her routine or scare her. My people are professionals. She won't even know they're there. Amara took a deep breath. She was either making the best decision of her life or the worst, and she wouldn't know which until it was too late. 1 week, she said. And then I walk away. 1 week, Dae-hyun agreed. He held out the envelope, and Amara took it with trembling hands. The weight of it felt like both salvation and damnation. There's something else you should know, Dae-hyun said quietly. Choi Jin-woo saw Min-jae with you tonight.
He knows my son is attached to you.
That makes you a target. Amara's head snapped up.
What?
I'm already arranging protection, a security detail that will keep you and your ward safe. But you need to understand the reality. By accepting this offer, by involving yourself with my family, you're entering a dangerous world. People will use you to get to me, to get to Min-jae. Then why are you asking me to do this? Because the alternative is worse, Dae-hyun said simply. If you walk away now, Choi will still see you as connected to us. The protection of my household, my resources, my reputation. You won't have any of that. You'll just be a vulnerable target with no defense. He moved closer, his dark eyes intense. I'm not a good man, Amara. I've done things that would horrify you. My money is blood money, my power built on violence. But I protect what's mine. If you accept this offer, you and your ward will have the full protection of the Kong family. No one will touch you without going through me first. It should have sounded threatening. Instead, it sounded like a promise. I need to talk to Chisholm, Amara said finally. She needs to know what's happening. I won't lie to her or uproot her life without explanation. Of course. Dae-hyun pulled out his phone again. I'll have a car take you home now. You can explain the situation to your ward, pack what you need. My team will coordinate with you about moving to the residence tomorrow, or later today, technically. He glanced at his watch. It was past 1 a.m. Take the morning to settle things. We'll send a car at 2 p.m. Amara nodded, clutching the envelope. Her mind was spinning, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 2 hours. She'd come here to serve champagne and make enough money for groceries. Now she was accepting millions of won to essentially become a surrogate mother figure for a mafia boss's traumatized son. One more thing, Dae-hyun said as she moved toward the door. Don't tell anyone about this arrangement. Not friends, not coworkers. The fewer people who know about your connection to my family, the safer you'll be. The 500 people at the gala saw Min-jae call me mother. They saw a confused child mistake a stranger for his dead mother. Unfortunate, but easily dismissed. What they can't know is that you're staying at my residence, that you're being compensated, that you're important. His expression darkened. In my world, importance makes you a target. The car that took Amara home was more luxurious than anything she'd ever been in. Smooth leather seats, tinted windows, a driver who said nothing but drove with professional efficiency through Seoul's late-night streets. A second car followed at a discreet distance. Her new security detail, Amara realized with a chill. Her life had changed in the span of 2 hours, and she wasn't sure yet if that change was for better or worse. Her apartment in Mapogu was small and shabby compared to the world she'd just left. Third floor walk-up, thin walls, appliances that broke more often than they worked. But it was home. Mrs. Park was dozing on the couch when Amara entered, Korean drama playing softly on the old TV. She startled awake, immediately apologetic. So sorry, I fell asleep. Chisholm was no trouble. Went to bed at 9 like always. It's fine, Mrs. Park. Thank you. Amara pressed 50,000 Korean wons into the older woman's hand, more than she'd normally pay, but she could afford it now. I'm sorry it got so late. After Mrs. Park left, Amara stood in the quiet apartment, envelope in hand, trying to figure out how to explain this to a 7-year-old. She checked on Chisholm first. The girl was asleep in the small bedroom they shared, dark braids spread across the pillow, one hand clutching the stuffed elephant that had belonged to her mother. Peaceful, innocent, unaware that their lives were about to change dramatically. Amara sat on the edge of the bed, gently brushing hair from Chisholm's forehead. The girl stirred, eyes fluttering open. Yuni. She used the Korean term for older sister that had become her name for Amara. You're late. I know, baby. I'm sorry. Something unexpected happened. Chisholm sat up, immediately alert. At 7, she'd learned to read Amara's moods, to sense when something was wrong. 3 years of being the only family each other had did that. Are we in trouble? No, Amara said quickly. Not trouble, but something complicated. I need to tell you about a job I've been offered. She explained it carefully, editing out the dangerous parts. A wealthy family needed someone to help their young son who was grieving his mother. They'd seen how good Amara was with children and offered her a temporary position. Good pay, safe residence, only for a week. Chisholm listened with a serious expression she got when processing important information. Will I have to change schools?
No.
You'll keep going to your school, same as always. Will you be with me? Every night. I'll just be working during the days, like normal. Why do we have to move to their house? This was the tricky part. The family lives far from here, and the hours will be long. It's easier if we stay there for the week. Think of it as a vacation. Chisholm was quiet for a long moment. Then, is it because of money? Because of the visa? Too smart. This child was far too smart. Partly, Amara admitted. She'd never lied to Chisholm about their financial struggles. The girl needed to understand why they couldn't afford the things other kids had, why Amara worked so many hours. This job pays very well. It will help us with a lot of things we've been worried about. Okay. Chisholm nodded. Then, with the directness of childhood. Is it safe? This family? Amara thought of Dae-hyun's dark eyes, his carefully controlled danger, the threat of violence hanging over everything. I'll keep you safe, she said, which wasn't quite an answer. I promise. Chisholm studied her face, then nodded again. Okay. I trust you, Yuni. Those words hit harder than they should have. This child's absolute faith in her, the responsibility of it. Amara prayed she wasn't making a terrible mistake. Part 4. The Enemy Within. The Kong residence was in Songbuk-dong, Seoul's most exclusive neighborhood. Not a house, a compound. Stone walls, iron gates, security cameras tracking their car as it wound up the private drive. The main building was traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern luxury, Hanok-style rooflines above floor-to-ceiling windows, manicured gardens surrounding a structure that had to be at least 10,000 square feet. Chisholm's eyes widened. They're rich, she whispered. Very rich, Amara confirmed, her own stomach churning with nerves. The car stopped at the main entrance where Dae-hyun waited, looking less intimidating in casual clothes, dark jeans, a simple black shirt. Still imposing, still dangerous, but more human somehow. Min-jae stood beside him, and the moment he saw Amara through the car window, his face lit up with joy so pure it made her chest ache. Yama. He ran to her as soon as she stepped out, wrapping his small arms around her legs. You came. You kept your promise. Amara knelt down, bringing herself to his eye level. I always keep my promises, Min-jae. The boy beamed, then noticed Chisholm hovering behind Amara. His smile faltered, suddenly shy. Min-jae, this is Chisholm, Amara said gently. She's my daughter. I hope you can be friends. Min-jae's eyes widened. He looked at Chisholm, then back at Amara, then at his father. Some complicated emotion crossed his small face. Confusion, maybe a hint of jealousy, but also something that might have been hope. Hi, he said quietly. Chisholm, ever the diplomat, smiled. Do you like Pokemon? And just like that, the ice was broken. Min-jae nodded enthusiastically, and within minutes the two children were chattering about characters and trading cards as Mrs. Cho led them into the house. Dae-hyun watched them go, something unreadable in his expression. He's never done that before. Made a friend that easily. Chisholm has that effect on people, Amara said. She's been through enough trauma to recognize it in others. She knows how to be gentle. Like her guardian. Amara felt heat rise to her cheeks and changed the subject. Where will we be staying? I'll show you. The guest wing was larger than Amara's entire apartment. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a sitting area with a TV and small kitchenette. The decor was expensive but understated, soft neutrals, comfortable furniture, everything coordinated with the kind of perfection that came from professional designers and unlimited budgets. The children can share the largest bedroom if they prefer, or take separate rooms, Dae-hyun explained. Your room is here. He opened the door to reveal a space that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. You'll have privacy. My quarters are in the East Wing, completely separate. He was being careful, Amara realized. Establishing boundaries, Making sure she understood this was a professional arrangement despite the unusual circumstances.
The contract, she said.
You mentioned. Signed and notarized. He pulled out a document from the folder he'd been carrying. Your lawyer can review it. The terms are exactly as we discussed. Korean 110,000,000 for 1 week, half paid up front, the rest at the end. Your only obligation is to spend time with Min-jae, help him feel secure. No additional expectations, personal or otherwise. Amara skimmed the contract. It was surprisingly straightforward. No hidden clauses, no trap language. Just a simple service agreement. There's one addition, Dae-hyun said. A confidentiality clause. Anything you see or hear during your time here remains confidential. That includes details about my business, my security arrangements, my family's private matters. I already told you I wouldn't tell anyone. This makes it legally binding. His expression was apologetic but firm. I'm trusting you with my son's safety, with access to my home. I need assurance that trust won't be betrayed. Amara signed. What choice did she have? She was already here, already committed. And honestly, the last thing she wanted was to gossip about whatever illegal activities funded this lifestyle. Your security detail, Dae-hyun continued. They'll be discreet, but they're always present. If you leave the residence, they accompany you. If you go to the foundation offices, they'll position themselves nearby. It's non-negotiable. Will Chisholm have security at school? 2 operatives disguised as staff. A janitor and a cafeteria worker. They'll keep their distance, but remain within response range if needed. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it emphasized how serious the threat must be. This man who threatened Min-jae, Amara said carefully. Choi Jinwoo. How dangerous is he really? Dae-hyun was quiet for a moment. Choi built his empire through calculated brutality. He doesn't make empty threats. If he said he'd hurt Min-jae, he meant it. He met her eyes. Which is why your safety and your ward's safety are paramount. My team has orders to eliminate any threat immediately, without hesitation. Eliminate. Such a clinical word for killing. I should let you settle in, Dae-hyun said. If you need anything, there's an intercom system. Mrs. Cho will show you how everything works. Dinner is at 6, casual, just the household. You're not expected to formally dine with me unless you're comfortable. He moved toward the door, then paused. Thank you, Amara, for taking this risk, for trusting me enough to bring your daughter into my home. I know it wasn't an easy decision. After he left, Amara sat on the impossibly soft bed and tried to process everything. 48 hours ago, her biggest concern was making rent. Now she was living in a mansion, caring for a traumatized mafia heir, with armed guards following her everywhere. Chisholm's laughter drifted from the other room, followed by Min-jae's delighted giggles. The sound of children playing, innocent and joyful. Maybe this would be okay. Maybe she could help this little boy heal, earn enough money to secure their future, and walk away clean after a week. Maybe. The first 2 days passed in a strange blur of domesticity and underlying tension. Min-jae followed Amara everywhere, his small hand constantly seeking hers. He ate breakfast with her and Chisholm, played games in the garden under Mrs. Cho's watchful eye, insisted Amara read him stories before bed. He spoke more each day, still quiet, still hesitant, but words came easier when Amara was present. The change in him was remarkable. Mrs. Cho cried twice, thanking Amara with wet eyes and broken English. Even Dae-hyun seemed lighter, some of the tension easing from his shoulders when he saw his son laugh. But underneath the peaceful surface, Amara sensed the machinery of violence moving. Dae-hyun was rarely present during the day. Business, he said vaguely. She'd hear him late at night, voice low and urgent in his study, conversations in rapid Korean that she couldn't quite follow. Men in dark suits came and went. Security patrols increased. Once, Amara glimpsed weapons being loaded into a vehicle in the private garage. Something was building. Something dangerous. On the third evening, Dae-hyun asked to speak with her after the children were asleep. They sat in his study, wood paneling, expensive art, a desk covered in papers that he swept into a drawer before she entered. "I need your help with something," he said without preamble. "Something that goes beyond our original agreement." Amara tensed. "What kind of help?" "The embezzlement I mentioned, the money being stolen from my operations. I need to trace it back to Choi, prove he's been sabotaging my business. My accountants have been through the records, but they're too close to it, too familiar with the systems. They can't see the patterns." He pulled out a stack of documents. "You studied accounting, you said, before you came to Seoul." "I didn't finish my degree. I'm not qualified. You're qualified enough. And you're outside my organization, untainted by assumptions or loyalties." He pushed the documents toward her. "I need fresh eyes. Someone who can look at these numbers and see what we're missing." Amara stared at the papers. This was different from caring for Min-jae, from being a comforting presence. This was active involvement in whatever criminal enterprise Dae-hyun ran, making her complicit in ways the original agreement hadn't. "Why would I help you with this?" "Because if I can't prove Choi's involvement, if I can't stop him, he'll escalate." Dae-hyun's voice was quiet but intense. "He'll stop making threats and start taking action. Min-jae won't be safe. Chisholm won't be safe. The best way to protect them is to end this quickly, decisively. By proving Choi's guilt, and then what? Killing him." Dae-hyun didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I can't be part of that," Amara said. "I won't help you commit murder. I'm not asking you to kill anyone. I'm asking you to look at financial records and tell me what you see. What I do with that information is my responsibility, not yours." It was a thin line, a moral distinction that probably wouldn't matter if anyone ever found out. But Amara looked at those documents and thought of Min-jae's smile, of Chisholm's safety, of the fact that she was already so deep in this that pretending she could stay neutral was naive. "What exactly am I looking for?" she asked. Relief flickered across Dae-hyun's face. He spent the next hour explaining his shipping operations, at least the surface level. Cargo moved through Busan and Incheon, everything logged and tracked, profits distributed through a complex network of subsidiary companies. Standard business, he claimed, though Amara suspected standard was generous. 3 years ago, the profits started dropping, he explained. Small amounts at first, easy to dismiss as market fluctuations. But it's been consistent, accelerating after Soo-jin died. Someone's been bleeding us dry, making it look like poor management. He showed her the records, columns of numbers, shipping manifests, customs declarations. To most people, it would be incomprehensible. But Amara had always been good with numbers, good at seeing patterns where others saw chaos. She worked through the night, cross-referencing dates and amounts, building spreadsheets to track the flow of money. Dae-hyun brought her coffee around 2 a.m., then disappeared back to his own work. Around 4 a.m., she found it. "These withdrawals," she said when Dae-hyun returned. She pointed to coded entries in the shipping costs. "They're consistent, same amounts, same timing, hidden in legitimate expenses. Someone set up ghost accounts to siphon funds automatically." Dae-hyun leaned over her shoulder, studying the screen. "Show me." She traced the pattern, showing how the money moved through several shell companies before disappearing. The timing corresponds with these shipping manifests from 3 years ago. But look, the imports don't match the customs declarations. Someone was smuggling something, probably weapons or contraband, and using the confusion to hide the embezzlement. "Can you trace it back to Choi?" "Not directly. These shell companies are registered in different names." She pulled up another document. "But look at the timing of these transactions. They cluster around the same dates as these maintenance records." Dae-hyun went very still. Soo-jin's car was serviced at this facility. According to these records, someone paid 5 million Korean wons to a mechanic at that garage 2 days before the accident. The silence stretched. When Dae-hyun finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Insurance payment." They made it look like a legitimate claim. Amara pulled up more files. If we can connect these payments to Choi's accounts, if we can prove he paid someone to tamper with your wife's brakes while simultaneously embezzling from your operations, then it's not just business rivalry. It's premeditated murder and theft. Dae-hyun's hands clenched. It's enough to turn the other families against him, enough to justify retaliation. He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. This is good work, Amara. Better than good. My people have been trying to trace this for months. I'm not done, Amara said. These transactions link to an account registered under a corporate entity, Incheon Trading Solutions. If we can prove Choi controls that company. She worked for another hour while Dae-hyun made calls, his voice low and urgent. By the time dawn broke over Seoul, Amara had built a comprehensive picture of embezzlement, sabotage, and murder. It's all here, she said finally, exhaustion hitting her. Everything you need to prove Choi's been sabotaging your operations and that he killed your wife. Dae-hyun stared at the documents, his expression unreadable. How long do you think he's been planning this? Based on when the embezzlement started? At least 3 years. Maybe longer. 3 years. Dae-hyun's jaw clenched. He was stealing from me, planning Soo-jin's death, positioning himself to take over my operations, and I never saw it. I was so focused on the foundation, on trying to make Soo-jin happy, that I didn't notice someone was destroying us from the inside. There was such self-recrimination in his voice that Amara found herself saying, "You couldn't have known. This is sophisticated, multiple shell companies, international accounts, careful timing. It would have taken a dedicated forensic accountant to uncover it." Soo-jin was starting to see it, Dae-hyun said quietly. That's why he killed her. She was reviewing the foundation's finances, noticed the discrepancies, started asking questions. She was going to trace it back to him. He turned to face Amara, and for the first time since she'd met him, his carefully controlled mask completely slipped. She saw the grief underneath, raw and overwhelming, mixed with fury and guilt. She died because I brought her into my world, he said. Because marrying me made her a target. If she'd stayed with her NGO, stayed away from my family's business, she'd still be alive. You can't know that. I do know it. His voice cracked. Choi killed her to hurt me, to destabilize my operation. She was collateral damage in a power play. And Min-jae, he stopped, breathing hard. Min-jae lost his mother because I wasn't careful enough, wasn't smart enough to see the threat. Amara stood, crossing to where he stood. She shouldn't touch him, shouldn't offer comfort. This was a professional arrangement, clear boundaries. But she thought of her own guilt, the aunt who'd asked her to take Chisholm, who died 6 months later believing Amara would give the girl a better life in Seoul. The weight of that responsibility, the constant fear that she wasn't enough. She understood guilt. She understood grief. Min-jae lost his mother because a bad man made a terrible choice, she said quietly. Not because of you. Not because of anything Soo-jin did. The guilt belongs to the person who killed her, no one else. Dae-hyun looked at her, something vulnerable in his expression. Do you really believe that? I believe we can't control other people's evil, Amara said. We can only control how we respond to it. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then Dae-hyun's phone buzzed, shattering the intimacy. He looked at the screen, and his expression hardened back into the controlled mask. Choi's demanding a meeting. Tonight. Will you show him the evidence?
No.
Not yet. Dae-hyun's voice was cold now, calculated. I need more time to position things correctly. If I confront him directly, he'll disappear or escalate immediately. I need to back him into a corner first. He looked at her. This meeting is dangerous. Choi will bring his people, there will be weapons. I'm telling you this because you need to understand. If something goes wrong, if this turns violent, Sangmin has orders to evacuate you and the children immediately. Where would we go? Safe house in Jeju Island. Helicopter on standby, always fueled and ready. If I send the code word, you go without question, without hesitation. His eyes were intense. Promise me, Amara. If things go wrong, you get Min-jae and Chisholm out. You keep them safe. The weight of what he was asking settled over her. You're going to confront him tonight? Eventually. But first, I need to show him I'm still weak, still grieving, still the man he thinks I am. Then, when his guard is down. Dae-hyun didn't finish the sentence. Amara thought of Min-jae asleep upstairs, of Chisholm in the next room, of the violence that was about to explode around them. Be careful, she said. Something flickered in Dae-hyun's eyes. Concerned for me. Concerned for your son, Amara corrected. He's already lost one parent. He can't lose another. It was a deflection, a way to avoid admitting that yes, she was concerned for Dae-hyun himself. That somewhere in the last 3 days, he'd become more than just an employer, more than just the dangerous man paying her to help his son.
She was starting to care about him,
which was the most dangerous thing that could happen. The meeting was at a private club in Itaewon, Choi's territory, his turf. Dae-hyun brought Sang-min and 4 others, a smaller detail than usual. Showing weakness, showing that he was stretched thin. The club was exclusive, expensive, and at this hour, past midnight, essentially empty. Choi had rented the entire space for privacy. He sat at a private table in the back, whiskey already poured, 2 of his men flanking him. More positioned around the room. Dae-hyun counted at least 8, probably more in the shadows. You came, Choi said with that same cold smile. I wasn't sure you would. You demanded a meeting. I'm here. Dae-hyun sat without being invited, a subtle power play. Say what you need to say. Straight to business. Choi sipped his drink. I admire that about you, Dae-hyun. No pretense, no games. So I'll be equally direct. Time's up. Sign over the Incheon docs by tomorrow, or I take them by force. I've already given you my answer. Then you're choosing war. Choi leaned forward. Do you really want that? War is expensive, Dae-hyun. It draws attention, police, prosecutors, international authorities. Your shipping operations can't survive that kind of scrutiny. Neither can yours. But I have allies. Judges, politicians, police commissioners. I've spent years building those relationships while you played house with your dead wife's charity project. Choi's voice hardened. You're isolated, vulnerable. Half your own people are questioning your leadership. You really think you can fight me? It was true. Dae-hyun knew it was true. Some of his captains had been making noise about his focus on the foundation, about time wasted on legitimate business, when they should be expanding their illegal operations. He'd been losing their confidence for months. Which was exactly what Choi had planned. My people are loyal, Dae-hyun said, keeping his voice level. Are they? Choi smiled. Let me tell you something interesting. Someone in your organization has been very helpful these past few years. Providing information, creating opportunities, making sure certain shipments went astray. Dae-hyun went cold. You're lying. Am I? How else do you think I knew about Soo-jin's investigation? How do you think I knew exactly when she'd be driving that mountain road, exactly when to have her brakes fail? Choi's expression was triumphant. Someone very close to you betrayed you, Dae-hyun.
Bitratsuhin.
And they're still in your organization, still feeding me information. The implications hit like a physical blow. If Choi was telling the truth, and the satisfaction in his voice suggested he was, then someone in Dae-hyun's inner circle was a traitor. Someone who'd helped orchestrate Soo-jin's death. Who? Dae-hyun's voice was deadly quiet. That would ruin the fun. Choi stood, finishing his drink. Sign over the docs, Dae-hyun. Do it tonight, and I'll tell you who your traitor is. I'll even let you handle them yourself. Refuse, and I'll use that traitor to destroy everything you have left. Your operations, your reputation, your son. He walked toward the exit, his men moving with him. At the door, he paused. Oh, and Dae-hyun? That African woman living in your house, Amara, isn't it? My source tells me she's been very helpful with your finances. spending nights in your study, going through your records. His smile was vicious. Such interesting company you're keeping. I wonder what else she's discovered about your operations. Then he was gone, leaving Daehyun sitting in the empty club, mind racing. A traitor. Someone close enough to know about Soo-jin's investigation, about the maintenance schedule for her car. Someone who knew the family's routines, security protocols. Someone who knew about Amara. To be continued in the next part. Thanks for watching. If you love this, then you'll love what's coming up next. Like, share, and subscribe so that you don't miss a single story. Check out the channel for more African Korean stories.